Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Another great interview here on YSN, one that I have wanted for an incredibly long time, probably since we started the business here on your sports network. This next guest of mine, a familiar voice, certainly a familiar face. If you like leadership, a guy that I looked up to, and this is no exaggeration, I've looked up to since I was a puppy in East Palestine Middle School. Graduated with his sister, his younger sister, went to church with his other younger sister, just a step closer to being in his circle, and a gentleman that I love with my whole heart. He is as humble as they come and has his hands literally in everything that you can imagine. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we bring in a legend, Tim Figley. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Wow. Better now. I feel a whole lot bigger. I'm usually walking around looking up to people. Now I feel bigger, but great. Yeah, so excited to be here and talk a little bit. We had such a great year for Bulldog football to resurrect a little bit and get back on their feet. That was so much fun, and a lot of good things going on.
You've got a lot of stuff going on, man. And you know, the best thing about you that I've learned is no matter how tough of a day that you're having personally, or a week, or a year, whatever it may be, you always have this great ability to lift others up, which I'm almost jealous of, because I try, and sometimes you have those tough days you can't do it, but you never stop. It's incredible the way that you make people feel and how people feel when they walk away from you. How did that all transpire? How did you become that guy?
Certainly wasn't like that for a lot of my life.
Yeah.
I think you go through challenges, you go through suffering, and you go through different things that are not easy, and you realize, I think that we're all suffering in some way.
Yeah.
We all can have that bad day, that bad year, go through difficulties, and we all need to be uplifted. I think, we all need that encouragement, that support, that goodwill. From my heart to yours, that genuine care, but going through difficulties, I think for me it was eye-opening that we're all in need of that.
Your last name, it resonates in East Palestine. I mean, when people think of East Palestine, that's the first name that comes to mind. I met Jim Trussell the first time. He asked me where I was from. I said East Palestine. He goes, the Figleys. I mean, and we'll come full circle moment here in a little bit, but I mean, for you, East Palestine means a heck of a lot to you. A heck of a lot. Same in this, on this side of the screen here. What is it about that little town that just makes your heart bleed brown and white?
Well, growing up, my grandpa actually had the Figley Shamrock Inn. Mm-hmm. So that was where every week after church we had breakfast, and you end up filling up the Shamrock, and you get to know everybody. You get to know people week after week. You get to know a lot of people, and I just saw the support they gave, the kind of the love he had for the community. And then that just resonated through a lot of his children, through his brothers, Fran and Bob, and his sister Mary Jane and Jean, who were 2 generations above me. But from my great-grandparents, I know that last I knew there was like 127 Figleys in East Palestine.
And I mean, everybody knows that's East Palestine. You have, for as long as I've known you, you've tried to give back to East Palestine. You've tried to help people, myself included. Your family have tried to do this and have done it successfully. And they've helped out people, that are Palestine graduates, people, Palestine residents, Palestine businesses. For you, you started I think junior, senior year. What was that called? That was in the old movie theater.
The community lighthouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, why that was on your heart, and how you kind of guided yourself and guided your family into that.
I mean, that was just right out of high school for me, actually. So it was knowing. So my grandpa was retiring.
Yeah.
He was moving on, and there was some buildings that my dad had there, and so that was just knowing that we wanted to give a place for young people to go. Whether just to play pool and listen to concerts and play games and just have a space, just create a space in the community. And I think, there was, it's funny because I still see people, especially when I go to the football games or something, and I'll still see, now they have children that are playing football or that are playing volleyball or basketball or whatever it is in school. And I still see them from those days, which is over 20 years ago at this point.
That's nuts. I mean, yeah, 20 years, man. That goes fast. For you, you've always had an affinity to help young people, rise up. I mean, I remember I was almost terrified to talk to you. Like you had this aura around you as leader and a guy that is bigger than almost life in that scenario. And I remember your sister Nikki, like, that's just my brother Timmy. And for me, you've always been Timmy Figley. We start YSN in 2017. Yeah. We get East Palestine 2018, 2019, whatever it may have been. And I remember the conversation with you was, whatever you need, I'm here. And I remember you sending me a text message of your dad coming into what was then the mattress store and saying, I believe in what you're doing here. And he prayed for me. It really was a turning point for me, because when you have someone believing in you other than yourself, it becomes real. And, you did the same thing. And the biggest thing to me was you said, hey, I'll jump on. I'll be the voice of the Bulldogs. And you not only jumped on yourself, but you brought on a co-pilot, so to speak. Talk to me about why, with YSN, it was important for you to be part of this, and then ultimately the story behind the co-pilot that became Dan Figley.
Well, what's funny is we think of YSN now, we're in 2024, but and we think of it as a household name. Yeah. It's a regular place to go to every day of the week, and especially Friday nights in the fall, But I think before that, there was clearly a void. When you think of an idea whose time has come, YSN has been that in our region. I mean, now up into Cleveland, over towards Pittsburgh. It's amazing to watch it bloom and blossom and continue year after year. But I think at that time there was definitely a void. And I think a lot of us thought, I imagine in a few years we're going to be able to watch high school football games just like we watch college. And sure enough, as YSN, that vision comes, it just was alignment with the vision. It was alignment with the vision. And then knowing, wow, we're going to be able to broadcast to people that don't live here, that are, I have relatives in Florida. I have relatives in Texas. I have relatives around the country. But so does every player on all of these teams and all these different sports. They have, grandparents. They have aunts and uncles and family members that want to be able to watch them. And I just saw it as really a gift to not just our region, which is where we think about it, but really a gift to people around the country, around the world who have been in our local schools but are no longer here. And that just, I wanted to jump on board because I just knew it was a way we could give back, but also highlight those important moments in all of our lives that we want to share, and then we have them on recording. I have moments from our first couple years, maybe when my son played basketball, or moments, that I want to look back and say, you know what, I have that now recorded, and I can go back to it anytime, which is really special for a lot of parents and a lot of athletes. And, there's a lot of athletes that come up that will say, hey, I know who you are. And I watch the games, the next day, because I really like to hear my name. And they tell me, I've heard that more than once, and so that, but I saw the vision, and I didn't know it would be what it became now. The growth has been beyond my expectation. Same. But to get right in there on the ground floor and to help those few schools that got on board, that was very exciting for sure.
I remember the text message you sent me. I was literally by my mailbox. You sent me a text message, and the guy that is the friendly neighborhood mailman, all of a sudden is the co-pilot, the second announcer, right, who became the play-by-play guy. Yeah. Funny enough, for the East Palestine Bulldogs in football and basketball. Walk me through, in your mind, hey, I think it's a good idea to get Dan involved here.
What's funny is I think we didn't even get started till like the third game that year, third or fourth game, somewhere in there. Yep. And by the time we knew we were going to be able to get started, it was maybe a Tuesday. Yep. I think by the time I had somebody, which ended up being Dan, was Friday. I think it was Friday afternoon. And I said, hey, would you want to do the YSN game? And we'll figure out who's going to be the play-by-play. We'll figure out who can be the commentary, you know. And he was like, sure, I'd love it. What I didn't remember was that when he was in middle school, that it was his dream to broadcast sports. I mean, I didn't remember that. Maybe I should have remembered it, but I didn't remember that at all. And so when he was in the newspaper, there was a little article about him, and his future goals were to be a sports broadcaster. So it was probably a few weeks after that his wife Krista sent me a message with a picture of that, saying dreams really do come true. And I was like, what? You know, I mean, that was so cool to me, because when I thought about it, I didn't realize that. Yeah. But serendipity, you know, comes in, and you know, that worked out really good for us.
And you guys have been killing it ever since. Now, there's been some lean years. When we've talked about it. The Bulldogs were in the Valley for quite some time. This year, they bounce out of it, a 6-4 year. But what's interesting, I never had to, as I have to do with some announcers, tell you to look for the positive, look for the good. And even in an 0-10, 1-9 season, you were looking for situations, almost comedically in some situations, so. You know, for the good, for the meat on the bone, so to speak, and to make sure that those families know that you recognize, we recognize that they're working hard too, even though they're not getting the wins, because people don't realize how challenging it is to get victories in varsity football and varsity basketball and things of that scenario. And during some of those times, you and Dan were the light. You were the light that people, it's funny, you look at the lighthouse, the community lighthouse, you guys were the light, because there were moments where you're like, hey, we went forward that time. We got a yard. We didn't lose 5. You know, talk to me. I mean, let's be real about those moments, because it is challenging as someone who is a Bulldog through and through, for you to announce those games and the pain and the heartache that you have for those athletes. What was it like for you, and how did you just find those words to almost be that warm cup of coffee that those parents, those families needed at that time?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely an adjustment period, you know, because the first year we were there, Parker Sherry's senior year, you know, we won some games, and we had a pretty good team. And then we did have those lean years that you talked about. And at first, it was tough to call. I mean, it was, like you said, very painful. Very painful when you do have that 0-10 year, and the games are never competitive. I mean, I can withstand a loss when it's competitive, because it's fun to be in. You know, it keeps the fans engaged. Each athlete is still working hard out on the field. But when it's no longer competitive, that's when it gets really hard. Yeah. So for me, broadcasting, it was definitely an adjustment period. And the adjustment period was simply, do I want to live in pain, or do I want to have some joy while doing this? And do I want the people that are listening and watching these games to feel that pain, or do I want them to feel some level of joy or find some solace in the fact that, you know what, there's some coaches that are putting in way more than 40 hours a week, maybe 80 hours a week into this, and a lot of them. There's some players that are coming and getting up and working hard at 6 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. before school to get that workout in, to get that run in, to get it through, you know, a few balls thrown that maybe they, you know, people aren't recognizing, right? There's somebody out there working hard. There's somebody out there that maybe doesn't have the parents at home. They're out there playing football or basketball or volleyball or baseball or whatever sport it may be, that this sport is going to be the group and the team that's going to get them to that next place in life, that they're going to remember, I think, forever. And I remember some of those players. I remember talking to them. There were some coaches picking them up on the way to the field because they didn't have rides. And that's just as valuable to them, and more valuable sometimes, than winning games. And so it was, you know, not letting losses dictate how we feel, not letting losses dictate how we're going to communicate the hard work, the effort that each athlete, each coach, every person's putting in this. Because I think from an outsider point of view, you know, we're all the armchair quarterback. We can all be critical. And we tend to naturally learn that criticism watching a professional game, watching a college game. And we're critical of the coach. We're critical of the quarterback. But this, I felt like, was just a little bit different. And there's just not a lot of room I think, to be critical when the very hard work they're putting in is going to be changing their lives. And it's going to be making them different people once they get out into the work world, because it's training them that if they go into employment, how to be on that team. If they go into the military, how to fit onto a team. If they go into college, how to be in a group, and that sort of thing. And, when I went to college, I wasn't really ready to go. But there's people that had less advantages than I did, or that a lot of us did. But because they were on that team, and my daughter's one of them, Miriam, she was in cross country, and they did great. I mean, the coaches and the team was amazing for her. She was in band, and Jen Mollenkoff and Chip and that group did. I mean, it was amazing. It prepared her to go to college and to find a group to be a part of, something, and then that group helps that individual grow and go and find their way, because I think small groups and teams are the way that we all grow, because it gives a little bit of feedback on how we're relating to one another. And it also is providing the mechanism for us to launch into what we can do best in our lives.
I've been so impressed with you because you mentioned teams. Mm-hmm. You were a golfer, and golfing is 1-versus-1 sport. Essentially. Yeah. They have golf teams, but essentially it's a 1-versus-1 sport, and it's you versus you a lot of times. Where and when did you make that shift mentally to go from I've got to worry about me to I've got to worry about everybody else before I even think about myself?
Yeah, I mean, so in 2008, I went through a divorce. My family lost their business, and I remember I was getting ready to coach my son's upward team, and he was in kindergarten.
Basketball.
Yeah, upward basketball team, and he was in kindergarten. And I remember going, and they said, well, where do you work? Well, our family business was just out of business. So I didn't have anything to write down. Are you married? No, I'm divorced. I mean, everything that I could have said wrong, I didn't want to say. Yeah. I didn't want to have to go say, this is who I am, here's my resume, because I really didn't have much. I went to college my first year and dropped out because I was doing other things and just didn't think college was the thing for me. And that year was very pivotal for me. I decided to go back to school, and I eventually said, you know what? I've already dropped out a couple of times. I'm going all the way. I'm not just getting a bachelor's degree. I'm getting a bachelor's, a master's, and I'm getting my doctorate. So I went all the way through from that point on. I also started a business, and I realized, wow, in starting a business, you have to serve. These fans are your customers. The customers are your fans. You have to serve, and you have to meet needs. And then along the way, part of that business was that leadership coaching. And I found, wow, I'm not able to affect change in the individual like I thought I was. But if that individual got feedback from the people around them, that mirror of reflective, input from people ended up really helping them change. And from that point on, I decided, I realized, you know what, we've got to build better teams. No matter what we're involved in, whether it's families, whether it's business, whether it's sports, education, nonprofit world, that sort of thing. I mean, teams are, again, like I said a moment ago, they're the things that are going to make us grow individually. And, in my world, working with other businesses and nonprofits and things like that, half of our waking lives were spent with our workmates. So those relationships are going to affect our health and our stress for the remainder of our life, and they're also going to affect our families and how we are when we go home to our children and our partner and things like that. And I realized, you know what, the culture of which the team is built is going to affect every element of our mental health, emotional health, physical health, and our relationships. And so that just became a priority. But that took at least 25 years for me to understand that and get there through trial and error.
They say if you can make your passion your business, that you're ultimately going to be successful no matter what stands against you. You have done that. You are living proof of that. I feel like we're both sitting in this room understanding that's living proof, but people don't realize the hardships that come with it. You talked about the teamwork, the leadership that you possess. You fast forward to Mark LaMancha and some of these guys that you have surrounded yourself with, the new book that's out. I saw that the Tressel interview, which was phenomenal, by the way, and you and I share almost an idolization for Jim Tressel and the leadership that he brings to the table on so many different facets. But people don't realize that you've gone through those classes and you chased out Jim Tressel when he was at Akron, sat in those classrooms and learned from him. And now full circle moment, you're sitting there on his podcast with Mark and talking about leadership, and that it's the same in business as it is on YSN, where you see these teams succeed.
Yep, it is.
How surreal has it been, this ride for you? And have you had a chance to look back at kind of how things began and go, oh my goodness, like it's not only happening, my friend, you're successful and you are encouraging others to follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, so the book with Mark is called The Industrial Athlete Operating System. And I actually got with Mark or was with Mark in 2013 and then really got more involved in 2020 with him in Hometown. And what's funny is when I would drive to Columbiana, I'd always see to the right, there on Route 46 after you cross Route 7 here, home of the industrial athlete. And I knew that was a cool concept, right? To have that concept that we all watch athletics every day. We're watching them every weekend. We can't wait till Sundays or Saturdays or Fridays. And yet he was bringing it into a place where a lot of people don't want to be, and that's the work world. People, they want to get out of that harsh reality of work to go play fantasy football and to go watch March Madness. And he was trying to do the opposite and bring March Madness and fantasy football into the workspace. And I just thought, you know what? Again, going back to what I said a moment ago, that we spend so much of our lives there and it affects the rest of our day. I had, from the first time I was there, I really wanted to do something and partner on that level. But Mark gave me the opportunity right around 2020 to come in and learn what he's doing inside of his business, what the coaches are doing and what the people are doing, and learn from his very innovative brain, because he's probably one of the greatest innovators that I've ever met. He has 37 patents on various things, from having a stop sign that'll tell you when to go. When you have a four-way stop, the stop sign will tell you who came first and when to go. He has the patent on that, but he has the patent on so many things. But the real one that was powerful, that he was able to utilize and brought change to many people's lives, was the visual earning system. And the visual earning system was, he took what everybody was doing in their work every day, and he was able to show them their productivity level in real time by the second. So as they're working, they can see a scoreboard, just like you would on an athletic field, and your real-time earnings. So they're not waiting till the end of the week to find out. They're not waiting till even the end of the day. They can see their earnings in real time and make those adjustments. And so what Mark gave me the fortunate opportunity to do was go in and learn from all of his coaches and people and find out what they're actually doing and what made it work. And we discovered, through with Mark and his team, discovered 4 things that were unique. And so he did the 4 transitions, or the 4 shifts that he made in the workplace, were from a workplace to a high performance center, just like you would if you go out on the athletic field, right? Secondly was culture, from a tug of war, which happens a lot at work, to a win-win culture. When you win, I win, and then we win together. That takes us from me to we. From employee, so I come in here and I'm an employee, to an industrial athlete. And that's a bit of an identity shift. It's an image change that all right, I got to take care of myself because I want to go in there and perform at the highest level. And then finally was the management shift, from boss to coach. No longer are we just top down, I'm going to tell you what to do. But no, I'm going to work with you to find out what you want to do, help get buy-in, and make it work from that coaching idea. So with Mark, we put out the book, the Industrial Athlete Operating System. That book was, oddly enough, submitted to the National Association of Manufacturing, which is the biggest manufacturing association in the world.
Wow.
And so in the National Association of Manufacturing, they actually nominated us for the category of transforming business cultures. So Mark and I actually went down to Marco Island in Florida, and there were 13 finalists on the stage that day, including IBM. And we're down there with Whirlpool and Cisco Systems and Peterbilt and General Motors and big companies. And Hometown's not anything compared to these large, billions of dollar companies. And we were on, Mark and I were on stage, and they said, "And winner of the Transforming Business Cultures Award," and they start naming the 4 shifts that I just named you. And I kind of like, I started getting chills, as we're standing on stage. It was like being at the Academy Awards for business and manufacturing. And the Industrial Athlete Operating System won that award as the premier idea in the nation for transforming business cultures. So that was an amazing opportunity. I mean, I can't thank Mark enough for allowing me to be a part of that with him and his team, and Sherry, his wife. And I mean, they're just, it's been really fun. And now it's, okay, how do you implement that further? But now other companies are taking interest. I mean, there's some local schools that said, all right, we want to buy 210 copies for every staff member to learn, so we can help make our school a high performance school. So that's been really a fun experience.
You look at, and what's funny is you and I talked about this, and Mark would tell you the same thing. He knows nothing about sports. He has zero interest in sports.
That's true.
But he's infatuated with the way that the culture is in sports, the team culture.
Exactly.
So you've come on and basically become the translator between Mark and the business side of things, and then the sports side of things, and being able to bring everything together with the team atmosphere. Because sometimes, when Mark speaks, he's so intelligent, he's so smart that he speaks up here. Yeah. And then I have to look at you to kind of dumb it down for me for the 3rd grade level, like a lemonade stand. So like how you're standing on stage with all those Fortune 100 essentially businesses, and then you've got Hometown, and what you and Mark have been able to do here. I talked to you about, how I look at you and I'm like, man, I like jitters when I'm in 7th grade because you are who you are. Were there any like starstruck moments for you knowing that who you're in that room with and who you're going to have those conversations with?
I don't know that it was starstruck about who I'm in the room with, although it was, Mark says it was like David and Goliath.
Yeah.
Right. So that there was that element. I think I was surprised that when the judges evaluated everything, they awarded the work we did as the best thing. That was the starstruck moment. It was like, I didn't expect it. I mean, I just absolutely did not expect that to happen. And yet it was the fulfillment of that is to know that we haven't put our efforts, in vain. Our efforts have not been in vain, but they really they're having an impact, and they'll continue to have an impact.
I mean, when you're sitting in some of those, handshaking moments with some of those people, though, that's got to be surreal, thinking, like me, again, you're just a kid from East Palestine. What am I doing here? But at the same token, you know why you're there. You know the work that went into getting there. Do you have to pinch yourself sometimes?
Yeah, I think also, I think my doctorate actually is in transformational leadership.
Yeah.
And you kind of go back and realize that true leadership is service. That's something that we talked about the Jim Tressel podcast, that he would say, right? Where you define leadership as service. He always says his mom was the greatest leader he was ever around. I mean, you think about the people that he's been around. He says, my mom was the greatest leader. That's how I can feel. I mean, I learned my mom, she pastored a church, the way she served our family. I mean, I watched how my dad was with all his salesmen and his 100 employees, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I just watched them serve every day. So, you get in certain rooms or whatever, you realize who's serving, who's here to serve, and all of us do things for different reasons, different motives, different intentions. But I know what your intention is with what you're doing with YSN, and that's why I'm on board.
Yeah.
It's because you're here to serve. You're here to serve. And of course, we have multiple intentions because we have multiple different things going on too. But at the core, you're here to serve because you want to uplift that kid that maybe you would have liked to have been.
Yeah.
I want to help that person that I wished I would have been helped by that year. So I think that's really where it is. No matter what somebody's name is or isn't, are we here to serve, and is it making that impact? And it's really the intent that I think we're coming from.
So, a couple questions off of that, because do you think that in that scenario, people that wish that they were in that moment, so I wish we had YSN whenever I was in school, right?
Yeah,
the 2002 East Palestine Bulldogs would have been phenomenal to cover. But do you feel like when you're in that moment, when you have that ability, maybe you don't have the abilities to be the star quarterback, but you have the abilities to help put them on a platform or like you don't have the ability to necessarily do what some of these others are doing and raise a business like Mark in that capacity, but you can help raise Mark up. Do you feel like you're better equipped to do that and to almost create more of you because there's more of us out there that can't do what LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was Stephen Covey said, leadership is the highest of all arts because it enables or empowers all other professions to exist. It it allows all other pieces of work to function, right? Is from leadership. So, I think that, sure. I think, you dream of what life might be and you think, wow, I want to be, I love golf. You want to be a Tiger Woods. You want to be LeBron James. You want to be, but really, and this is another thing that I think learning from Mark, and right now we've transitioned to help people find their career and their calling. So we've been going into schools and helping them find their careers. And the dream is really not for me to be a LeBron James or a Tiger Woods, but to be really the best self, the best God-given self that I can be or that you can be. And there's going to be much more gratitude and fulfillment in that than ever trying to be somebody else. So, I think our impact level becomes greater when we get aligned with who we're truly made to be. What is my unique personality? I don't have the extroverted, outgoing personality to start a YSN and deliver like you're doing. I'm a little bit different. But can I be the best I can be while you're being the best you can be? And now can we complement each other rather than compete against each other?
Yeah.
And if we're complementing each other and we're supporting, the synergy is the multiplication. There's multiplication to that, to making that impact grow. And I think we find both internal fulfillment, health, longevity, all when we're doing what we're made to do.
It's funny, you mentioned your mom and dad, who I think an awful lot of, Tim and Cindy Figley, some of the greatest people I'll ever know. Makes absolute sense that they produced you and Nikki and Chelsea and all the great people that I've had in my life since I was, again, just a puppy. Your mom and dad, I know they're a huge influence on you, not just when you were young, but to this day. Talk to me about the best traits that they have that you think that you've inherited and that you've kind of re-gifted to the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with my dad. He did a lot. He included me in a lot of things. So, if he had a business meeting, by the time I was 13, 14 years old, number one, he had me going to work every Saturday when I was off school when I was 13. So I'm washing cars. I advanced from washing cars to working in the parts department by the time I was 16. And so I worked there 16 and 17. And then by the time I was 18, from my Mount Union dorm, he allowed me to sell cars, and make lease transfers and do things like that. So what he gave me was opportunity. And then, he was judging boxing matches. He was going around the world judging Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Buster Douglas. And I got to be at ringside for a lot of those, events, which was really fun. So, but with opportunity came vision. I mean, so I think that was really a gift for me. It was a vision, and then vision creates a bit of a hunger to get to that vision. So it's like, wow, there's a lot of cool things I got to experience, which created a vision, which created a hunger, and that hunger gets you up in the morning and gets you working hard. It makes you want to continue to grow, make that impact. My mom, I think, going back to what we said, the same thing that Jim Tressel said about his mom, is servant, service, servant leader, making sure everybody had what they need every day, making sure not only just my family, but my family's friends. I mean, she would go visit all of our friends on their college campuses and take them care packages. And she did it for, her parents and her in-laws, and just a whole 360, life around her. It's just serving the people. And so I think you combine vision and you combine service, and those are two key qualities that I think that I probably gained and gathered from them.
It's incredible. I can talk to you all day. You know that. And hopefully you'll come back and we can sit down again because we're running out of time. I know you are a crazy busy individual. But one question that I wanted to ask you before you go, because you're a guy that has not only overcome so much in your life, personally, professionally, all that stuff, but you, when we were starting, and you talk about vision, I knew where I wanted this to go, and I wasn't sure how to get there. You kind of took me under your wing and you said, listen, there's going to be failure along the way. Think of it like baseball, because you know I was a baseball guy. And you said, see those failures as steps moving forward. And as long as you continue to move forward, you never have to worry about looking backward. For you, for people out there that are watching this, that are going through, whether it's a good time or a bad time, what are some of the most important things that you would categorize? People see failure as finality, right?
They do.
And they see success as a destination, but you've told me this entire thing is a journey. What would you tell people out there about that journey that you've been on, and kind of give them a little bit of a pat on the back and getting to the journey that they're destined to become?
Well, you can look at failure, F-A-I-L, fail, as a first attempt in learning. And I think I saw that one from Mark as well. But it's really true. I think if we allow the moments to define our identity, we can get stuck. So whether it's a good moment, we can get stuck with a head bigger than we really are, or a bad moment, we can get stuck and not move forward. But moments are moments. And I think, even Nick Saban says that a win is almost, winning and success, even a national championship, is momentary. But the impact you have on those lives around you is certainly everlasting. And so I think I spent a lot of time in my life. You asked, how long did it take to learn different things? And I said, sometimes 20 and 25 years to get something figured out. But I probably spent a good 5 years maybe, or 10 years, where I would remain stuck. I mean, I wasn't able to move forward because I allowed a failure to define me. But I think for anybody, if you can understand that failure is probably one of the greatest learning lessons that you're ever going to have, and that we're going to learn more oftentimes from, or I guess they would even say lessons learned hard or lessons learned well, that we're going to learn, and our nervous system is not going to want to experience that pain again, right? We're driven by, usually pain and pleasure. Pleasure we want to run towards, pain we want to run away from. But sometimes failure teaches us the greatest lessons that we need to know, I don't ever want to experience this again. So I'm not going to, therefore I'm going to do something else. And allow that to be the thing that doesn't define us and allow us to stay stuck, but allows us to be the greatest lesson. And, I think we're all wounded healers in one way or another. I mean, if you didn't have a setback that you had in high school, you may have never had the dream to do this and the drive to keep it going through the tough times. If I didn't have some of the setbacks that I had, I wouldn't do the same. And so many of us, right? Men, women, young, old, we're all similar. It's some of those setbacks that give us the greatest lessons, but give us the greatest compassion to help us fulfill our true calling, which is, going back to what we said a moment ago, really serving others and making that impact on the people around us.
Wow. Tim Figley, I hope this is the first of many, because I think there's so many things that we can talk about and help people out there listening to this and give them an understanding that it just doesn't come overnight. And you, my friend, like I said, you've been my hero, one of my idols since I was just a boy. Thank you so much.
Let's just say that, because when you say that, I'm like, what? But it's because you came into the gym.
I did.
And I was... What was going on there? I mean, I was the one announcing the game, right? You had a spirit to you, just as you do that now, and the guy that always had the most school spirit, the guy that always, you were what I wanted to be, and Nikki and I believe had most school spirit when graduated. We had the picture taken. Emily Randolph, class of 1997, most school spirit.
And we were right behind you, class of 03. But I mean, you were a guy that I've looked up to because of not just the likeness of each other. You've overcome so much, and being able to run it back, and you never stopped. I mean, you were tired, you were beat, you were you had your hands in the mud. And you always said, "Hey, let's go. Let's." You never turn people away, which is is something that I've been so grateful for because, I'm a competitive person. You're a competitive person.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, if Tim can do it, I'm going to do it too.
And now we get to do it together.
And that's the best.
Yeah,
That's the team mentality. And I get to keep learning from you every day, which is a blessing. And keep, your mom still likes my posts and your dad just loves every time he sees me, he loves on me. And I know it's a 45-minute conversation and I've never been happier in that 45 minutes. But speaking of 45 minutes, this has been a great 45 minutes with you, man. I can't thank you enough. Please come back. I would love to talk to you
Let's
again.
do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tim Figley, ladies and gentlemen, right here on YSN.